joining us online today. My name is Carmen Neustader, and I am the Dean of the Faculty of Communication, Art, and Technology at SFU. As FCAT spans all of SFU's campuses, I would first like to respectfully acknowledge the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kikite, Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, and Tawasan peoples on whose traditional territories our offices, schools, and programs reside. I'm personally thankful for the work being done across FCAT on curriculum decolonization, Indigenous student recruitment, the hiring of Indigenous faculty members, and more as we work towards reconciliation. I encourage each of you to recognize the location in which you are joining us from within the Hop-In chat. Next, I would like to welcome Elder Dennis Joseph, who will welcome us to this land. Xwechtaal Dennis Joseph is an elder from the Squamish Nation. He is a traditionally trained speaker in the Coast Salish Longhouse and has facilitated numerous ceremonies. He is a reliable community supporter during times of need. Xwechtaal served 28 years on his nation's chiefs and council, working for them a total of 40 years. Elder Dennis is passionate about the performing arts. He is an aspiring actor and comes from a long line of musicians. Xwechtaal grew up with music being a passion of the household, learning various instruments throughout his adolescent years. He has been a member of multiple musical groups. When the COVID-19 pandemic struck and we were in lockdown, he even decided to turn his basement into a personal recording studio so he could have more opportunity to share traditional Squamish stories through music and spoken word with others to help uplift their spirits. He has made contributions to his community, serving as the cultural liaison for many events, including the Aboriginal Achievement Awards, the Vancouver 21 Winter Olympics, and the Talking Stick Festival. Elder Dennis has been an active participant of the tribal canoe journeys for many years, including a year of paddling and many openings and blessings. He is a co-founding member of the Squamish Nation Peacekeepers, for whom he volunteered for over 25 years. Through this work, he established many connections with the local RCMP and West Vancouver Police Department, which resulted in his appointment to the police board in West Vancouver. Welcome, Elder Dennis. We are glad you can be with us today.
Osiam hoichoch, tuma kutsnachum stomo, hoichoch oatsen stomo, siam and siai, hoichoch hachanek, tisha ochomeo, Xwechtaal kushaman, and hot and squallow and siam and siai, hoichoch tuma kutsnachum, hamalterson ochomeo, tuma kutsi. My dear friends and relatives from the four directions, I bring warm greetings and blessings on behalf of the Coast Salish people, all that Brother Carmen had mentioned. I bring special warm greetings and blessings from Hamilton Village, where I reside. It's also known as West Vancouver. You know, I want to congratulate all the FCAT, the undergraduates, for participating in this conference. A special welcome to Dr. Jules, Kustachen, who will be sharing this morning with special messages. And, you know, I've been searching my heart and mind and spirit what to share with you, and couldn't help but note that Dr. Jules is a bit of a storyteller as well. And the story I want to share with you, I learned from my grandmother as a tween. She was at least 108 years old when she passed away when I was 15. And this story I heard from her. She said, back in the day, we had many visionaries, people who could tell when things were going to change, that a floating island was going to come through the waters here on this coast. And on this island will be trees. And in the trees will be ghosts. And right where Lionsgate Bridge is, not too far from where I live here, is where this vision manifested itself. You see, the floating island was the hull of a tall ship. The trees was the mast, and the ghosts in the trees were the sailors furling the sails to enter what is now known as Burrard Inlet. And when this day happened, this moment happened, the Squamish went out in their canoes and greeted this vision coming to manifest itself to this part of the coast. And what they did is rarely seen, maybe once or twice a year in our longhouses. They spread eagle down in front of the hull of the ship as it entered Burrard Inlet. It is a high blessing to have the sacrifice of the feathers of an eagle to bless and welcome this vision coming to be. Brother mentioned a spirit of reconciliation. And I'm grateful and thankful for those committed to taking the steps to understand, truly understand what Indigenous people are going through and what we are going through, what we know as Canada. With the discovery of the new ones coming to light from under Mother Earth has helped hammer home this truth, a truth that cannot be changed, no different from what's going on in Europe right now. I want to dedicate this song to them as well. That peace come to the world and to hear the understanding come. I'm grateful and thankful to be a part of this few minutes. This is Sequoia Slalom. It's also known as Greeting of the Day. Sequoia had a longhouse where my great-grandmother, I mentioned, grew up in Stanley Park at what is now known as Lumberman's Arch. She was a lady who was a paraplegic 6-7 generations ago now. And through the heartbeat of the people, the drum, her husband heard a song and her loneliness and crying over her condition, and he heard a song and he grabbed his drum and sang with her because this cry was different. Something I share with you through my great-grandmother is all of humanity has a song. Every nation has a song. And it's up to you to find out what that is going to be if you haven't already. I share this blessing for all of you and all those that I mentioned. Ya, ya, oh, oh, oh. Enjoy your day, everybody. OCM. Jumakwitsi.
Thank you, Elder Dennis, for your warm welcome and wise words. I'm very thankful that despite being online for today's conference, we were still able to hear you sing and play as part of your welcome. Next, I'm very honored to welcome SFU President, Dr. Joy Johnson. Joy Johnson is SFU's 10th President and Vice Chancellor, a president committed to enhancing student learning experiences, working towards reconciliation and advancing equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism across SFU. Joy is committed to academic excellence and creating learning environments where everyone thrives and fulfills their potential. I warmly welcome Dr. Joy Johnson to say a few words.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joy Johnson, President of Simon Fraser University. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the SFU Faculty of Communication, Art and Technologies 2022 Undergraduate Conference. Over the past 2 years, we've had to learn new ways of communicating with each other, depended on innovative technology to keep us connected, and understood perhaps more than ever the critical role that the arts play in documenting this moment in history and showing us new paths forward. This is the moment that our students are responding to. The projects being presented today are contributing to a body of knowledge that will shape the world around us in ways big and small. And I, for one, cannot wait to see what that world looks like. A huge thank you to the faculty and staff at the Faculty of Communication, Art and Technology for bringing us together, to our keynote speaker, Dr. Jules Koostachin, and to the SFU alumni who have taken time out of their busy schedules to participate today. And of course, to our student presenters. Don't forget to have fun, and no matter how your presentation goes, though of course I hope they all go very well, I want you to take pride in the hard work and dedication that led to this moment, because I know everyone here today is so proud of you. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you, Joy, for the very kind and inspiring words. And as you have already heard, this is our 12th FCAT undergraduate conference. I'm extremely proud of all of FCAT, including our students, faculty, and staff, for making this such an incredible event and bringing us together for the past 12 years. The FCAT UGC is a celebration of exploration of the diverse range of student work produced within our faculty, from the School of Communication to the School for the Contemporary Arts, the School of Interactive Arts and Technology, and the Publishing Program. Students from each of our schools and programs have the opportunity today to showcase performances, research papers, displays, and other creative installations. As usual, our students have accomplished so much over the past year, and we are here to celebrate their accomplishments. Their work highlights how much our students from across our schools and programs have in common when it comes to shaping, creating, and thinking critically about how we perceive and interact with the world around us. This year, we are very fortunate to have 20 projects that will be presented, which showcase the work of 39 different students. And as you know, events like this don't just happen. They take a lot of hard work by many people to put together. This year, the organization team was faced with a lot of uncertainty around changing health orders and restrictions. And of course, this made planning the conference a very difficult challenge. We are very thankful for everyone's patience and perseverance throughout the organization of the event, and very thankful for the work of the organizing team that has put the conference together for us today. Thank you also to all of our student presenters for submitting your projects and being showcased at this conference. And of course, your hard work throughout the past year to get you to this point. We are most certainly really proud of you. Next, I'm very excited to introduce our FCAT UGC 2022 keynote speaker, Dr. Jules Koostachin. Dr. Jules Arita Kustachen is an Innu Isku or Swampy Cree woman, and a band member of FCAT First Nation located in what is now called Northern Ontario. Jules was raised by her Cree-speaking grandparents in Moosonee, as well as in Ottawa with her mother, a residential school warrior. She is a graduate of Concordia University's theater program and Ryerson University's documentary media master's program. In 2010, Jules was awarded an Award of Distinction and an academic gold medal for her thesis documentary film, Remembering Inanemowan. She's the mother of 4 incredible sons, a published writer, performance artist, an academic, and an award-winning filmmaker. She completed her PhD with the Institute of Gender, Race, Sexuality, and Social Justice program at the University of British Columbia, and her research focuses on Indigenous documentary practices. Jules is represented by the characters Talent and Lucas Talent in Vancouver, and she's the voice of Layla, Molly's mom, on the award-winning animated series Molly of Denali. Jules has also been actively working with Indigenous communities supporting women and children who face barriers. I'd also at this time like to introduce you to one of our fantastic graduate student ambassadors from the School for the Contemporary Arts, Shauna K Brown, who will be helping facilitate Jules's keynote.
Thank you so much, Carmen. It's so nice to be here. Okay, so Jules, we often talk about the somewhat indirect path life takes you on in discovering our professional practice and career. And your work converges on so many on life's intersections: academic, community, identity, indigeneity, filmmaking, the experiences of women. I mean, I could go on, right? Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
So I just want to first say Chimigwech to Elder Dennis and to you, and thank you for FCAT for inviting me to be here with you all today. And I have to say, I really love your glasses. They are so
thank you.
Why? But yeah, okay. Awesome. I think I need to find a cool pair here too.
Hey, I'm here for it.
Yeah, so I don't want to age myself here, but you know, I'm a child of the 70s. So we grew up on NFB documentaries, you know, during rainy days at lunch hour and recesses. So I was always watching documentary film. I think when I was a kid, you know, I had my own little productions going on in my head. I was an actor in a commercial. I always thought I was in the movies, you know. I was just this kind of cool kid that was very creative, loved the performance art. And yeah, I just, you know, I think it's always been in me. And I think being, you know, the child of a residential school warrior, and we lived in poverty. When we weren't living up north with my grandparents, we were living down south in an urban center in Ottawa. And my mom was working a lot of hard labor jobs. So there was a lot of challenges. So I feel like when I was a child, storytelling was my outlet. It was my way to kind of deal with what was going on in my household. So I don't know, I just feel like storytelling is always been an integral part of my life and who I am. Yeah. And then, you know, later I, you know, tried out high school, didn't do very well in high school. I loved theater and, you know, the after school programs and stuff like that. And I found my calling, but, you know, my grades were not that great. But I also think too, you know, it was hard for me to navigate a colonial institution, especially as an Indigenous person. I always felt like I didn't fit in. I had extreme hearing loss as a child, so there wasn't a lot of supports there. And, you know, I just struggled. And, but I always loved theater, and I always loved my theater classes, and I did well in creative writing. But, you know, I barely passed. So I didn't know whether or not I was going to go forward with academia just because I wasn't doing well at it. But then again, when you know context, you know how many of us struggle with the institution. I don't think it has anything to do with intelligence. It's just whether or not it's an inviting environment for us. And a lot of the curriculum, as you know, is very colonial too. So we're not represented in the coursework. But yeah, so I just kind of always loved theater and the arts and film. I'm a big film nerd, a big documentary nerd. It's kind of funny because I have my kids, right? And I always watch all these they say, very dry documentary series. And they're amazing. And my kids are always there just kind of going, what are you watching? It's so boring.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
So it would have been after that point that you got into, after high school, like, I mean, you always watched films, documentaries, always seen yourself in the content, like you've always seen yourself, you know, doing something like this, right? So at what point did you get into it?
I think I was always into it. I feel like, you know, I grew up in community with my mom and my grandparents and all of their siblings. And I grew up like listening to these amazing stories by these wonderfully powerful, resilient Cree people. So I was always inspired to tell stories. It was just something that was in me. But I remember when, this is kind of a funny story. So I'll tell you a little bit about what happened. So as I said, my grades in high school were terrible. I applied for the theater program at Concordia University in Montreal, and I got in, but I got a rejection from admissions. So back then we had snail mail. On the letter itself, there was a name at the bottom, and picked up the phone and totally lied and said, hey, who's this guy's boss? And then I booked an appointment with the guy who rejected me with his superior. I don't know how I did it. I just did it. And then I don't hitchhike. But back then I hitchhiked. I was kind of on my own. So I was 15. So I just figured I'd make my way from Ottawa to Montreal. And I went to this appointment, this meeting with the head of admissions. I can't remember what his name was. But I remember walking into his office and seeing this kind of small little bald man sitting behind this huge desk. And I was like, okay, I've got to convince this guy that I want to go to university. I've got to convince him. And at that particular time, I was also offered a lead in a play, and I was offered a job at a tattoo salon. So I was like, what do I want to do? Anyway, but I knew I wanted to go into theater. So I sat with him, theatrics, the tears, and I said, you have kids here that, you know, they're probably going to party for 4 years, but me, I I'll be the first one in my family to go to university, you know, and I was just like, you know, I don't have anything else going on. And then he just sat there like straight face, and he goes, come back in 30 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was all like, oh no, I'm never going to get in. So I leave. I come back and he's not there. It's just the receptionist. I'm like, okay, but there's a letter with my name on it, like an envelope with my name on it. And then I was accepted. So that's how I got into university. But I struggled. He added 2 extra years in extended credit program. I had to take ESL classes because I think what happened in elementary and high school, I just fell through the cracks. I mean, I had the hearing impairment, and I just struggled, and, you know, learning disability, or what, you know, I was labeled as having a learning disability. So it was just all those barriers. But, you know, I did it. I graduated I graduated with my oldest son. He was 2, and then I was pregnant, fully pregnant, I think 8 months pregnant when I did all my final exams for my undergrad. Yeah, I did it. I just feel like, you know, when I went to Concordia University, it was 1 year after the Oka crisis. I met some incredible Indigenous artists and activists. I hung out with my friend Kizus, and I remember going to Kizus's house in Montreal, and she had this beautiful house. I never seen Native people with houses like this. I was like, wow. And there was awards everywhere, art from around the world. And I was like, what does your mom do? And she's like, oh, my mom's a filmmaker. Your mom's a filmmaker? Like, you know, and then it was Alanisa Bomzawin, who's our big matriarch of film here, Turtle Island. So I spent a lot of time with Kizus and her mom. And I remember watching 270 Years of Resistance. I don't know if you've seen that documentary, but it was the first time in my life that I ever heard the voice of an Indigenous woman telling the story. Because, you know, in documentary, they have the didactic voice, the voice of God, which is usually the white man talking about their interpretation of who we are. But I remember seeing that film and I was just blown away. It was the biggest turning point. Like, I just realized that this is what I wanted to do, even though I kind of took on documentary a little later on in my life. But that was it for me. Like, that, to see this incredible woman speak to Indigenous issues, and she was fearless. Like, I don't know, an incredible matriarch.
So your story, there's a lot of great determination, like not taking no for an answer. And it sounds like you've had like a lot of really, really good, influences and mentors along the way. So who are some of these people, or what are some of the significant influences and mentors that have impacted your journey and your creative practice?
I think being raised with my grandparents was huge. Like, I had that root. Like, I grew up with grandparents who did not speak English. They spoke Inanimoan Cree, and they were both hunter-trappers. We didn't use money for the most part. They went out hunting, and then we would clean the hide, and my grandparents would cook from what they hunted. We didn't have electricity for the most part. We didn't have plumbing. We had to go fetch our water. So that's how I grew up. But I grew up with storytelling all around me. And my grandparents were my biggest influence. My grandmother did not go to residential school. She was actually hidden from the agents or priests because of her hunting ability. She was such an asset to the family. So they just couldn't risk her leaving or being stolen, mind you. So I think being raised with someone like that was so incredible. And then also my mom, like she's gone through a lot in her life. She was taken at the age of 5, taken or stolen to, imprisoned at St. Anne's Residential School, which is one of the most controversial, notorious residential schools, I believe. So she spent a good 11 years of her life there and came back completely changed. So, I mean, she inspires me too, because she's such a strong woman and, she's went through so much in her life. And I feel like she put all her energy and time into us, her kids, so that we had a chance, an opportunity. And it was hard for her, like, just not having money, and English is her second language, and leaving residential school with a grade 4 level education. And that's not on her. That's because it wasn't like, you don't learn in residential school because there's a lot of trauma and abuse. It's hard to, it's not conducive to learning. But yeah, I mean, I just love film. I've always watched film. I feel like I've watched everything. But I think my main source of inspiration, or main sources of inspiration, are my grandparents and my mom.
Wow.
Yeah. My mom, we love my mom. She's so cute. And she's always in my films too. And she's so funny. She's like, when are you going to stop putting that camera on me? Like, leave me alone now. But I'm just like, okay, Mom, just one more film, please. Just one more film. And, and she's so funny because she's very shy. My mom is so shy. And then she's been in a couple of my projects. Whenever she goes to powwows or events and stuff, people recognize her and they want to hug her and stuff. And she's just like, oh, like, Mom, you're a movie star. Yeah, but I think through film too, it's allowed my mom the opportunity to share her story. So I feel like the more she shares her story, the more comfortable she is. Like, it's just, I've seen her, her confidence grow, and I've seen her kind of articulate in a way was very different before, my filmic career process. So yeah, it's been good on all ends for sure.
Nice. And in terms of like sharing your story, like at any point, did you have like any reservations? Like, were you in the first sense very nervous, like, or in terms of the reception, but also in terms of like trying to tell the story, like such an expansive story, like, did you have any reservations?
I don't know about reservations, more so I remember I did my degree in theater, did lots of theater, and then took a break and had my kids. And then so I have 4 sons. My oldest one is 27. Then I have a 25-year-old. Then I tried for a girl. And then I have twin boys who are 15, and they're all cis male. So I feel like I got a lot of testosterone around me. Anyway, but when I went back to school to do my master's in documentary media at Ryerson, or now X University, I remember, I took a night course. I took a night course called Make Your First Film. And I did. And I was like a 15-minute film. And I thought, this is the best movie in the world. I'm going to win all these awards. And it was just like, because I put my heart and soul, because as an artist and as a storyteller, you're so vulnerable, right? You you put your heart out there and you just think it's incredible. Now, when I look at that film, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, but the story is there. The story is there, but how I executed it, like, I mean, I obviously didn't have the skill set or the experience at that point. I had some in theater, some transferable skills, but I feel like it's not a reservation. It's more just feeling vulnerable, because you know how the world is now. Everybody's a critic, and
yes,
and people make comments, and I'm like, well, why don't you make the film then? It's not easy. Like, it's so hard, right? Like, it's a long process, and you go through this period of pre-development, development, production, and then you go through this labor of love, and you birth this story into the world. And then everybody's a critic, and you're just like, oh, can't you just say something now nice? And that what I say now is, when I do screen tests, or if I, you know, talk to people and I want feedback, I'm like, you can give me constructive criticism, but also an offering. What else would you suggest? So that way, you know, it's something I can walk away with, instead of having my ego demolished. I'm just kidding.
True, that's true. So let's go back to the first film. That was the best film ever, right? What advice would Jules now give to Jules back then?
I don't know if I would change anything, because life is a process and storytelling is a process. You know, I feel like I've worked really hard to get to where I am today. I mean, it was just, I mean, I wish I had more money. I wish I had more time. I wish I knew what I was doing. But I mean, that's all part of it. And you just get better and better, you know? I just read this book. I think it's called Mindset. Oh, who's it from? Anyway, and talking about, you know, embracing those challenges that we have, and always being open to grow and learn. You know, I think it's through practice and doing that we get better and better. So if I didn't have those experiences, I wouldn't be here today. And I feel like every, as you probably know, millisecond in our lives, you know, our life can go this way or our life can go that way. So we're on this path, right? And we make these choices. And I feel like I'm very happy with where I am right now. And if anything was different, I'd probably have a whole different, I'd be somewhere else. But, you know, even having my kids, you know, I had to put my career on hold twice. Like, I had two sets of kids, my older kids and my younger kids. And I've had to, you know, work in the arts part-time. And that was really hard. That was a grieving process, because I've always been an artist. But I don't regret having my kids, obviously. But I feel like that kind of pulled me away from, you know, where I wanted to go artistically. But then again, I am where I am, right? And my kids are also part of my process too. They're part of my storytelling journey. And my kids are incredible. Like, I just, it just happened the way that it should. And I'm really grateful for that.
Nice. So in terms of, all right, so you wouldn't change anything about your journey. Like, do you have any advice for young filmmakers, people who are, you know, really in love with the art of filmmaking?
Yeah. And I also want to add to that too, if there's young people that are struggling with academia as well, like, I felt like I came from a very different ethos, like a very circular way of learning, a very Cree way of being. So that really was challenging for me when I went into this kind of linear way of thought. And so I had to learn how to write essays in a linear fashion. And then, you know, I just, you know, I feel like, just don't give up, don't take no for an answer, and honor where your roots are. Like, you know, if you come from a community that's very different than, you know, what you're experiencing in the institution, honor that, because that is an asset. I feel like I learned what they expected me to learn from university and college, but I also ensured that I remained who I was as a Cree woman and honored that way of looking at the world. So I feel like that too in filmmaking is that, you know, my grandmother, my nanan, always said, know your story first, know who you are before you tell the stories of others. And I've always like carried that in my heart. You know, I was part of a documentary a few years ago called The Jingle Dress, which I recommend. It was the first time I was dancing in powwow with Jingle. And it was a non-native filmmaker, an amazing guy named James Buffin. And we both ensured that he had to follow protocol. And he worked with our mentor or consultant, Lee Miracle, the late Lee Miracle. So I feel like just do what feels right, have a methodology. So if you're working with elders, regardless of where your community is, if you're working with elders and knowledge keepers, if you have to go into a community that has been marginalized by colonialism, when you go in, make sure you know what the protocols are. And I feel like as Indigenous storytellers, the stakes are high for us because these are our relationships. So we are held accountable and we're obligated to tell the story right. And I feel like that's kind of universal. If you're an outsider going into someone else's community, then due diligence. Make sure you build relationship. Make sure that you're comfortable with the content. And part of your methodology too should be checking back with subjects in your film or checking back with the community to make sure that, they're okay before you, you put it online or it goes out into the world. I just feel like do things respectfully. If it feels wrong, it's not the end of the world. You'll have another project, but just kind of, it's like every step of life, put some thought, be present, make sure that you do everything that you can to be respectful. Yeah, I just feel like there's so many things, right? There's so many things for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Those are some really very, very, very wise words. And I think a big part of it speaks to respecting traditions and also respecting the lived experiences of persons who came before us, So it's something I think I think a lot of times we get caught up, like you're here now and you're doing everything and it's, a great world. And you don't take the time to, really be present in experiencing, especially when elders are sharing things with you, to really be present because you don't know what you have until you have to look back and so wise,
Right. Yeah. Sure, totally. I mean, it's just life, right? Everything's related. So, and I don't think there's a word in the Cree language for art. It's like creating from the heart kind of thing, right? So any artist here, whatever it is that you're doing, when you're in the zone, in the creative zone, it's like a form of meditation, right? It's just such a spiritual experience, even if you don't consider it spiritual. But I feel like when I'm in the zone, I am hyper focused. I want to be there. I am so present, right? And I feel like I've always told my kids, and I used to teach for a while too, I would tell the students, I said, if you would do it for free, then that's what you need to be doing. Because, you don't want to be spending your life doing 40, 50 hours a week when you're not happy. Life goes by really quick. And I learned that lesson because I grieved my career, right? Because I had two sets of kids. So I know what it feels like that was the worst time of my life when I felt like, okay, I'm going to walk away from this. And my heart was broken. My soul was just there was a void. And then when I made the decision this year after I last year, I defended my PhD, I decided to, my kids are older. I was like, you know what? If I end up living in my car, I'll live in my car. But I was like, I need to honor myself and my creative gifts, because I'm getting older now and time is passing and I just feel like I'm, catching up with all these other filmmakers and stuff. But I feel like it's my turn or my time to step into that light and honor myself and honor, my role within my community and other communities, to share the work that I have. I feel like I said before in other interviews, I talk about story carries agency. Story has the ability to change perspective. What's incredible about any film, and you probably watch film too, is if you watch it 10 years ago, you have a different interpretation. If you watch it 5 years ago, or even you watch it later, whatever, every time you watch that film, you have a different takeaway. And that is the power of story, because it depends on the receiver, right? Where are you in your life at that moment when you engage with that story? And you'll find so many different lessons and messages within it. So that's what I think is so incredible. So anyway.
Yeah, that's such a very important point. So as a filmmaker, you have a social responsibility.
Yeah. And things change, terms change, everything changes. And that's the beautiful thing about the lives that we live is the world is constantly changing, you know, and as Indigenous people, I think people think we're locked in the past or static or, you know, and it's like, no, we're here amongst you. And our stories change too, and how we work with stories or engage with story changes. Protocols change, you know, traditions. I don't even think there's a word in Cree for tradition, which I don't necessarily use that word often because it feels like there's a timeline. And in Cree, it means to do something over and over again. But you do something over and over again until you need it to change. So, you know, I think that's also an important lesson too, is be flexible, be open, really get to know, if you're in documentary or doing media or interviews, make sure you get to know the people, your guests that you're interviewing, and spend some time with them and check in with them often. And with scripted, now I'm moving into scripted. That's a whole other, even in the writing process, again, you just have to be open to transform and revise and change and omit. Like, I just feel like there's so many things you need to do in scripted, but yeah, I think it's transferable for sure.
So in terms of like, we're talking about things changing, like what are you working on now?
Oh, okay. So I just finished my first feature scripted, Broken Angel, which I started working on in 2006.
Wow.
But at that time, people were like, no one wants to, you know, engage with a story about a domestic violence or about an Indigenous woman fleeing domestic violence. But I was just so frustrated with what I was seeing on the screen. I'm like, I've worked in shelter system. I've worked in the crisis centers. I've worked with incarcerated women. I've worked, you know, I've worked in all these in the social service sector for a long time. And I felt like the films that I was engaging with, especially the ones from Hollywood, but anyway, I felt like they weren't reflecting that reality. So I decided to write a script called Broken Angel. It was a night class that I was taking at George Brown with this incredible instructor who scared everybody but me. I just thought she was incredible because I like people who are straight up and honest. Don't tell me it's good if it's not. Like, tell me what I need to do to make it better. But anyway, so I just went into production with that in 2021. So it was a long journey. But the thing is, what's interesting is I had so many story editors. I loved all my story editors. They were amazing, but I lost myself in the journey. I lost my voice in that journey. So when I went to the Whistler Screenwriters Lab a few years ago and worked with Dennis Foon and the other mentors in that program, they didn't necessarily touch the content or the indigeneity of that story. They just helped me streamline and find my voice again. So then we got money, and that's going to be out this year. And it's an incredible story of a mother and her daughter, and their matriarchs, they're warriors. You know, it provides context, but it also is a story of hope and resiliency. So that's one. And then I've got another short that I'm launching this year called Mystic. It's a post-apocalyptic film that I wrote before COVID. Everybody's like, I don't want to see any more of these films. It was in response to the fact that we never see any post-apocalyptic stories with Indigenous people. Really, I don't know any. And we would be the ones who survive. Indigenous people of the world would be the ones who survive because they live off the land. So that's one short film. And then I'm starting production today, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm off to Whitehorse soon. But we're starting production on my first NFB feature film, Wapake, which means tomorrow. And it's about being the child of residential school warriors or being the children of, and talking about futurity and hope. But again, like with that particular film, we started that before the 215, before the unmarked graves. Just, again, with this one, I have to be very careful. I have to follow protocol. I have to honor my subjects, guests. I have to be present through this process to make sure that I do this story the best way possible. But I think it's timely. I think, anyway, that's what I'm working on, and other projects, obviously, but I've been busy. So it's been good. Haven't had to live in my car, and I'm not even talking about that.
So then these are your new projects, right? So for people who are just like people who are just being like, oh my God, I need to watch Jules's work. What do you recommend for people who are like just like getting into your work, like first films to watch?
So I'm with V-Tape Distribution, which is an
Mhm.
artist-based distribution organization based in Toronto. And I just love them. They support artists like
Mhm.
wholeheartedly. So and it helps the artists too. So you can check out their library of films, and they've got a lot of Indigenous film. I say, well, for other institutions, or, just support the artists by getting some of our films, because we get a little check at the end of the year for artists. No, and that's like, you can find a lot of my work there at V-Tape and a lot of other Indigenous filmmakers. So it's a great library. I have my own website too, JulesKoostachin.com. I'm on Instagram, but I just feel like, I try to put stuff out there as much as I can. Broken Angel will be broadcast on APTN, Aboriginal People's Television Network, but we're going to do the film festival window first. And then obviously, National Film Board also has tons and tons of films from Indigenous filmmakers. So, and a lot of them are free, so you can access them on their website. So you can always find me. I'm sure I'm around, but please don't pitch me on Facebook. I find I'm getting all these pitches now. Like, people are pitching me projects, and I'm like, I'm still catching up with mine. I love your work, but let me just catch up first and figure out where I end up in a few years. But yeah.
Nice. So I'm going to check if we have any comments from our audience. If not, I'll just have you go with any parting words, anything that you'd like to leave us.
So I also have, if there's educators here in this space, I have a TV series called ASCII Boys, and we have a website called ASCIIboys.com. And that was something that, interestingly enough, I pitched when I was in graduate school. And the professor at the time told me, oh, this has no legs. It's never going to go anywhere. Da, da, da. And I was like, no, this is a great show idea. It's amazing. And basically, it was dedicated to my grandparents. And it was my two teenage boys, Asivac and Mehegan, and then putting them out on the land so they can learn from elders and knowledge keepers. So it was a great concept, like a fish out of water. So when I was in master's program, the prof was like, I didn't like it. And I was like, well, I like it. And then I pitched it to APTN, and they said yes. So I ended up in production not too long after. So again, if someone says no, just find another journey, or find another pathway to bring you to where you need to be. I guess it's just my upbringing. I have this incredible drive. And I just feel like when someone says no, I'm like, I don't know if I believe you. I'm going to try this way. But that show is available online too. And you can, if there's educators in your life, or if you have younger siblings and stuff like that, it's a great show, and it's a great resource for the classroom. Because when I produced that show, I was the mother of 4 kids, and I felt like my kids Asivac and Mehegan, who are teenagers, were not engaging with material that I thought was appropriate, especially when it came to indigeneity. So when you look at the website, there's little teaching tutorials. There's like how-to videos in both Cree and in English. We have the 13 episodes, and kids, they just love it, because my teenagers at the time, who are now 27 and 25, were hilarious. Like, they had no idea what they were doing. And I was behind the camera just trying not to laugh, because I was watching my boys going, oh my God. And they're like 22-minute episodes. You can use them in university too. Like, I've done a lot of tours with the show, and it's just a fun, happy-go-lucky show where the shoe's not going to drop, because I think sometimes too, when people engage with Indigenous story, they feel like there's going to be trauma and there's going to be pain. I mean, we do have that, but with some of my other films like Niso Tewak, which is on CBC Gem, Ashkiki Shigao is on CBC Gem, Kaya Meta, I use Cree names, is on, you can put Jules Koostachin CBC, they'll come up. And ASCII Boys are all very lighthearted projects, because I felt like our young people needed something positive to engage with. They needed to see themselves reflected in a positive way, and also with the context. So yeah, I have lots of projects out there. A lot of them are online. I have a film called Placenta. If you have any midwives or doctors in your life, that one's kind of a fun one, and it's about birthing ceremonies. That one's online, so you just have to Google, and you know, you can use stuff in the classroom. And I just think they're great ways to start conversation and dialogue. Not that I have the answers, but I feel like it's a conversation starter for a lot of people. So
we have a comment here. Daya saying, Jules, thank you for inspiring. The engrossing way in which you shared your story proves that you are a brilliant storyteller and communicator.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. I have a lot of
very true.
Yeah, I feel like there's lots to share, and I'm just really grateful. And I just like, again, you know, find your truth, speak your truth, be true to yourself, be present in your life, be present every day. You know, I know there's going to be a lot of challenges. It's been was it almost 3 years now? So it's been really hard on a lot of us. We've had a lot of loss, you know, and there's a lot going on in the world. So self-care, I think, is really important, and reach out when you need help. I'm also on the board of Kids Helpline and worked with the Indigenous strategy there. So I've worked really hard with Kids Help Phone to ensure that we were servicing Indigenous youth and children, but they also provide services for university students as well. So just know that you're not alone, and find what makes you happy and follow your heart.
That could not have ended up like, this is such an incredible story of resilience, not taking no for an answer, you know, being present, staying connected and true to yourself and to your, you know, lived experience of your community, and just like overall absolute fantasticness, like overall. So thank you so much, Jules, for sharing your story. I don't know if you have socials that you'd like to share, like where people can stay up to date with your work, you know?
Yeah, Instagram, and I don't do Twitter so much, but I see Shiraz here. I know. Oh, what is your favorite Indigenous film with stories of elders, grandparents, grandchildren, and friendship? I think the film that's just about to be released. So thank you, Xwechtaal. That was incredible. It was so nice to see you, and I love those shades. I'm so jealous. I got to get myself a pair.
Hey. Yeah.
I see Carmen. Hi, Carmen.
Hi.
All right, I think we're wrapping up our keynote. So first, many thanks, Jules, for a terrific keynote. Personally, I always find your stories very fascinating and personally impactful. So thank you for sharing with us. And of course, safe travels to Whitehorse. I hope it all goes well for you.
Cold. So nice.
And Shauna K, thank you very much for facilitating. That was a terrific job.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we are just about ready to move into the presentation section of our conference. First, just a couple words. I'd like everybody to give a very warm thanks and applause to our sponsors who have helped make the FCAT UGC possible. So thank you to Old Spaghetti Factory and Vancouver Water Adventures. We really appreciate your kind support. And now I will hand over the event to FCAT's amazing communication, design, and event assistant, Victoria San Martin, to introduce the presentation blocks to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria, and I just wanted to give a big thank you to Carmen and everyone for those opening remarks. We will be now taking a break for just over half an hour and come back at 12:30 to move into the student presentation portion of our event. And then we'll have our moderators and student presenters heading to the rooms a little bit earlier at 12:15. The student presentations will be taking place under the Session tab on the left for 2 blocks. After you click on Sessions, you can navigate to one of the rooms to watch. The full presentation schedule is on our website. Mex will share the link for you now in the chat so you can decide which presentations you want to watch. Thank you, and I'll see you after the break.